Hi everybody, welcome to Cyberpunk 2077, and this is a test of the capabilities of my new PC, a kind of review. So if people are interested in getting a Lenovo Legion T5 with the AMD Ryzen 7 processor and the GeForce RTX 3070 graphics card, and you want to play Cyberpunk, I'm going to go through some of the settings. Now, I'm no expert at setting up a PC to run well. So basically I've just made sure that I haven't got Chrome running or anything like that, and we're just going to go through some of the settings to give you an idea. Now, I'm using a basic FPS counter, so if you look at the bottom right hand side of the screen, right at the bottom, you should see the FPS counter. Nothing flash, just a simple FPS counter, and we're just going to hang around in this sort of central location, kind of where you start the game, because there's lots of stuff going on. So first off, let's go into the settings. And let's choose our graphics setting, and let's go to the top one, so Ray Tracing Ultra. So this is the top setting really for Cyberpunk 2077. You can fiddle around with some of the other stuff as well, and let's see what frames per second we get. Now remember, unfortunately I can only capture this at 1440p, 60 frames a second, so that's the maximum that the GeForce Experience software will capture at, and also this is running at 1440p as well, and my monitor can go up to 144 Hertz. But as you can see on the top setting, if we just move around, we're getting about 40 FPS, 45. And what you'll probably see is if something busy happens, it will drop down considerably. Like if we spin around, you get situations where it can drop down to we're up at 50, but it can drop down to sort of the 30s as well. Let's go across this bit. 47, 44. Now, for me, because I'm coming from Xbox Series S, where the game basically was capped at 30 frames a second, you had to really rely on motion blur to make the game look good. So we're getting sort of between 40 and 50 frames a second. You get these, you might have seen that, you kind of get these stutters every now and again where something busy happens. Now remember, this is the top settings for Cyberpunk, and it's running at 1440p, so it's still going above 30 frames a second, but not, but not by much. I mean, it still looks very, very impressive. And at night it looks better with ray tracing. But I tell you what, let's see if we can put it on at night. If I go to the right settings, skip time. Let's go round to there. Let's see if we can get night and see what happens to the frames per second there. We've got a storm cloud. This always happens, doesn't it, when you try and do something? You get a bloody storm cloud. Okay. A sandstorm, sorry. So we're still getting, it's all foggy, isn't it? So we're getting around 50 frames a second. Now when you drive as well, I think actually Cyberpunk gets smoother. I guess it ignores some of the stuff that's going on. But there we go. So we've been getting between 40 and 50 frames a second on the highest settings on Cyberpunk at 1440p, which is pretty good, isn't it? It's pretty good. So let's go back over to our start position. Let's run up here. But from experience, I know it does clunk down occasionally, definitely to below 30 frames a second. So now let's go into the settings, and let's take it to. Let's take it to ultra, but without any ray tracing on. And if we go down the bottom, we'll see we haven't got DLSS on as well. So because the Legion T5 has got a GeForce, an Nvidia graphics card, we can turn DLSS on, which helps with performance should we need it. So let's try it without DLSS on first and just see what sort of frame rate we get. So, we got some big stutters there, didn't we? Got some massive stutters to start off with. We're down at 18 frames a second. Something strange has happened. Alright, there we go. It sorted itself out now. So we're up at 50 frames a second. So basically this is the same graphic settings but without ray tracing. In fact, let's go skip time. Let's go down to the daytime and hopefully we'll get some clear weather. So the game will look better. There we go. So while there's not many people spawned in, you see what we're getting. 55 frames a second. 57, 54. See, I think this looked considerably smoother than it did with the ray tracing on. Again, it might be difficult to come across as you're seeing it, because again, you're seeing the down-resed and down crunched up version for YouTube. What we're getting about 50 frames a second. It still looks way smoother than the Xbox Series S version. Not that that one looks terrible, but this still looks pretty good. However, what we're not hitting is, you know, for me, which is what you're really looking for, which is the 60 frames a second and above, which is what you really want. You know, that's where you go, yeah, this is very, very nice indeed. Now remember, Cyberpunk is notorious for being a game that is difficult to get to perform very well. So let's go back to our starting position again, and what we're going to do this time is we're going to put on DLSS and we're going to see what happens there. So let's go back into the settings. So we're still on Ultra, but let's go down and turn on DLSS, and we'll put it on balanced. Ooh, don't want to turn the sharpness on. Not really sure what that does. Right, and then let's apply that. So we're at 1440p, ultra settings without ray tracing. And what's happening now, right, see we've gone up 75, 73. What's happening now is the special algorithms on the card are boosting the performance, hopefully without damaging the resolution too much. And the way it does it, it kind of uses AI. So I think what happens is the game actually renders at a lower resolution, and then the card up-reses it, so to what we're looking for 1440p. And depending on what's on the screen, it does different things. So if we look at the FPS now, we're kind of up at 70, aren't we? So we've gone above 60 frames a second. Let's run around a bit faster. And this is where I think you're really starting to look at, oh right, yeah, this is where the game really comes into its own on something like the Legion T5 with this 3070 on, because you're getting above 60 frames a second. You know, it's solid above 60 frames a second, which is nice. As we wander around, and that looks pretty good, that does. So let's see if we can skip time. Let's see if we can go to the night, see if we can get a nice, I always think Cyberpunk looks amazing at night as well. See if we can get it without a sandstorm or fog. Are we still going to get a bit of fog? I wish you could change the weather. You can actually with a mod. Yeah, it's a bit smoggy, isn't it? So we're not getting that. So we're up at 90 frames a second now, as you can guess, because you know the render distance doesn't have to be very high, does it? When you're in the fog, or when you're in the smog. .74 frames a second. What these fellas are up to, these ladies. Let's go back to the daytime. There we go. That looks much better, doesn't it? I love the look of Cyberpunk. I think it's absolutely amazing. So we're getting above 60 frames a second, aren't we, here? On ultra settings, with DLSS on balanced. And for me, I think this is probably the best setting to play Cyberpunk 2077 on the Legion T5 on 1440p. Because you're getting that lovely, smooth, above 60 frames a second frame rate. But you're getting the ultra settings, you know, we're getting all the lovely detail. And okay, so we haven't bothered with ray tracing, but ray tracing wasn't that bad. You know, we were getting above 30 frames a second, weren't we, with ray tracing? But I don't really notice that much difference with ray tracing. You see the kind of the occasional thing. But the amazing thing about Cyberpunk is just the sheer detail in the environment as you're wandering around. It's so cool. Right, so there we go. So remember when you're watching this, if you're thinking, oh wait a minute, but we're not getting like 120 frames a second out of it. That's because Cyberpunk is such a detailed game, and I guess you could probably say, as of June 2022, they're not going to make it any more, well, I don't know what the word would be, you know, to make it run better on PCs. But I mean, this looks pretty fantastic if you ask me. And with that smooth frame rate, what are we up at now? 94 frames a second. That looks very nice indeed. And I think, to be honest, the best way to play Cyberpunk is with a controller, because if you're playing it with the controller, you have the ability to walk slowly like this and just take in this amazing environment that CD Projekt Red have made. I mean, it is just stunning how this game looks. And then when you're playing on keyboard, your character's always kind of walking really fast or running all the time. But with a controller, you can just turn your walk down to a crawl and just stroll around and just really enjoy this amazing scenery. So there we go. That's enough of my waffling on. So we've looked at a few of the settings on Cyberpunk 2077 on the Lenovo Legion T5 with the Ryzen 7 and the GeForce RTX 3070 graphics card. For me, I think the best way to play it is Ultra with DLSS on balanced, and it looks fantastic because we're getting, you know, well over 60 frames a second, almost up to 90 frames a second most of the time. So anyway, that's enough for me. What do you think? Put your questions and comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you want to see more of the same, press subscribe. And I will, of course, see you again soon.